Well, welcome to the MBR podcast summer series where I get the easy job. My colleagues do have to do all the hard work. Sounds like a perfect format. And today, Kate McVicar is in the chair. She covers all the good stuff, liquor, hospitality, horticulture and retail. She's also my coffee buddy. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you for having me, Simon.
First of all, before we get into the business of stuff, a great year for you, winning the Emerging Journalist of the Year award at the New Zealand Shareholders Association Awards. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll resist the urge to sing a Diana Ross song. I'm coming out.
Oh my gosh, that would be a highlight. All right. Oh, look, okay, enough about you. Shall we talk some business?
Sounds good.
All right, so look, you have quite a range of topics that you cover, and ones that really the consumers are really interested in. I just wondered whether you have picked one for us, which is the biggest success.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for me it's Briscoe Group.
Briscoe's,
Yeah, so managing director and majority owner Rod Duke, I think he's just done an amazing job this year. Obviously, it's such a tough time for the consumer and retailers in general, but just looking at my notes here, I mean, the group's stock is up 19% year on year, and if we actually take that, we narrow that in again to the lowest point, which was in June 27th, through to Monday, which was, December 9th.
Yep.
That's actually a 40% increase.
40%.
Yeah.
How does he do that in such a tough environment?
Well, there's a secret sauce.
Secret sauce. You know, one thing I've learnt since coming onto the NBR, everything seems to be about the secret sauce, a cooking analogy for business.
Absolutely. And with Briscoe as well, you've also got, they're outlining a $100 million new warehouse facility as well. So you've got plans for growth as well on the horizon, which will be interesting to watch.
And Briscoe's, you can never buy better or buy a share better anyway. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So there's always the opposite side, isn't there? So, and it has been tough. I mean, the sectors you cover have seen some really tough times. Who hasn't really got it right?
I mean, the warehouse would be the obvious answer.
Yeah.
That's been a pretty tough one. But actually, for me, it's going to be Burger Fuel this year.
Burger Fuel?
Yes. So
what a surprise.
Earlier this year, they had a bit of a controversy. They tried to do a capital return for their shareholders, and it actually ended up in court with the family trust of their founder, who said that they should be, or they could be, using the money better to prompt growth for the company.
Right.
And so I just think that's a really interesting one. Probably not an obvious answer. But
No, not obvious answer, because, you would think, fast food, recession, people just turn to those kinds of, quick, easy, cheap fixes. But no, the founders didn't like what they were doing.
I mean, cheap, easy fix was their approach for a capital return as well, rather than reinvest that money for growth.
Yeah, very good. Good analogy. So, a range of things in your portfolio of subjects. Do you think, what would be the biggest story that you've sort of covered this year? Or do you think there's a biggest story warranting mention?
Biggest story for me, I mean, it probably does come back to the warehouse again, I have to
admit.
More broadly for the company, Duval is going to be a top answer, right?
I know, it's a hard one to beat.
But I think a dark horse contender is actually a piece my ex-colleague Maria Slade wrote back in April. Mysterious publisher leaves a string of workers out of pocket. And that was about a magazine publisher with multiple identities. Really, exactly that, leaving a whole bunch of contractors out of pocket.
Right.
And just kind of seeing how that one unfolded through the office. Even our co-editors got calls up from one of the identities of this magazine publisher, and also just kind of seeing the final piece that Maria put together puts that one pretty high up there for me as well.
Okay, that sounds fascinating.
Let's go and read it.
I will. It was before my time here, but I have to go through the extensive back catalogue. Now, okay, we've got a new section, a new segment for this Summer Series podcast, all down to you. And so this is a quick-fire session on in terms of good or bad business behaviour, people that you have covered. And so you've brought in some props. I know this is an audio-led, but you've brought in some props. What are we doing with these?
Yes. So I have listed down several different companies, and what we're going to do is you're going to tell me if you think it had a good year or a bad year based on your panel, and are we going to see if we match?
I've got a little
if
good
I agree
year,
whether
bad...
it was a good year or bad year.
And in my hand, for listeners, I've got a good year, bad year paddle. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Alrighty. Should we start with Briscoe?
Okay. Well, that's an easy one, isn't it? I'm going good year.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so we match on Briscoe. That's an easy one. Next one?
Michael Hill.
I have no idea. Bad year.
Bad year.
Why?
Yeah,
Why a bad year?
Pretty tough. I mean, for consumers and stuff. They've also been dealing with a lot of retail crime. Just a pretty tough year. They have had a few bright moments. They've doing a bit of a brand relaunch as well, and a few new flagship stores. But overall, pretty tough year for them, to be honest.
Okay. Yep. All right.
Alrighty, warehouse.
Well. Need to write something on these panels which says really bad year.
I'm going to be controversial and say good year.
Why?
Well, all right.
Hang on a sec. How can that be a good year for the warehouse?
Okay, all right. Hear me out on this one.
Yeah.
So, obviously it's been a really bad, tough year.
Yeah.
But I think it's the year they needed. Because if you think about it, the strategy just hasn't been working up to now. This is like hitting the brakes so that they can turn the corner.
Yeah, and they've been having their something kicked by Kmart, aren't they?
Exactly. So, hopefully they're going to have a new CEO come in. They're changing the strategy up a wee bit. And, so I'm going to be a little bit controversial on that one.
Well, so you're saying that they're going through the pain that they need to go through.
Exactly.
That's pretty brutal. All right.
If I could put that on the panel, I would. But, we're working with what we've got.
Okay. We're moving on. So the next one is, I'll say it out loud, it's Hallenstein Glassen, which is the clothing group.
Yes.
Right. Who is involved in Hallenstein? Is Hallenstein's Glassens? Do they have any other brands?
No, those are the two main ones.
They're the two main ones. Okay. So, I have no idea on this. But because it's retail, I'm going out with bad year. Good year.
It's a really good year for Hallenstein Glassen, actually. They the youth are just still spending, which is great.
The youth are spending.
And particularly for James Glassen, it is a extra good year for him.
Why is that?
He is in charge of the Australian branch of Glassens.
Yeah.
And that is just going gangbusters at the moment.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't hear about that? Well, I haven't heard
great.
about that, but I'm sure you've written about that. All right, moving on. So here's one that we both have reported on, especially you, and it is
MVicar,
the honey exporter, I guess you call it. Well, that's got to be bad year, right?
Yeah,
because
I agree with you on that.
Didn't the CEO say it's in crisis at the moment, the honey industry?
He did.
Yeah. Terrible year.
That's going to be a really interesting one to watch next year.
Well, we'll talk about next year in a moment. There's one left on your list. Scales.
Yes.
Now, scales, I'm not super familiar with scales, but they are in the horticulture. Are they apple growers and things like that? Yeah.
Yes, so they have Mr. Apple, which is an apple company. They also do shipping. That's where they started off, actually.
Yeah.
And they also do pet food, and they call it Global Proteins.
Global Proteins.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to go first, don't I? So I would imagine that since they're in horticulture, it would be still a bad year because they're still recovering from, say, the weather events from last year. So I'm going bad year.
I am going to go with good year.
Okay, tell me why.
The managing director, Andy Borland, is really great with the company, and he's got a really solid strategy. And yes, despite what you would naturally think with their horticulture division, they actually didn't get off quite as bad as people expected.
Right.
And their Global Proteins is really holding things up at the moment.
Right.
There's obviously some challenges with the pet food industry. They're going through some inventory challenges with retailers not sort of stocking up as much and things like that. But that's actually a real area of growth. And so that's really holding things up at the moment. And
scales, good year. All right.
Very good year.
Okay. Well, thank you for the inaugural round of Good Year, Bad Year on the podcast.
No problem.
Let's talk about next year then. What is sort of going to catch your eye, do you think, in 2025?
The first thing to watch will be retail spend.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we're going to have people starting to report these sort of Christmas summer shopping, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to see if consumers in the New Zealand public are starting to bring their wallets out again or if they're keeping them in their back pocket.
And the hospo industry will be interesting to watch as well over the summer period, I guess.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I'm not sure about you, but just around Auckland City, there's been a lot of Christmas parties, so that's certainly helping hospo at the moment.
You think that could be an anecdotal barometer of whether people are spending on hospo?
Maybe. We'll see. The other thing I'd keep an eye on is whether we see some more takeover activity. So obviously the warehouse potential buyout fell over earlier this year, but will that come back? Will their majority shareholder maybe come on board? We're not sure. Will there be any more interest in MVicar? They've previously had interest from a Chinese party.
Yep.
Might that come back if things aren't great at the moment?
Okay.
And also T&G, which is another horticulture company, they've got some challenges at the moment with their parent company, which is a German horticulture company called BayWa.
Right.
And BayWa is going through some challenges at the moment, and it's unsure what's going to happen to T&G.
Right,
I guess,
they could flick them off or do something like that.
Potentially.
Yeah, okay. All right, things to watch, lots coming up. Here's a question for you using your prop at the
Okay.
very end. Kate McVicar, did you have a good year or a bad year?
Let's have to think about this.
Oh, that's a pretty easy answer, isn't it?
All right, we'll go with a good
We
year.
go with a good year. That's right. Well, absolutely. Emerging Journalist of the Year. What more could you want? Kate, enjoy the summer break. I hope it's when you get to enjoy the hospitality, not report on it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.